Okay, this is a part two. I was talking about the whole escalation between Iran and Israel and where it would go. I don't think we're actually going to have full-on regime change. I think it's more subversive, and I don't think it'll be quick because the transits to both Mercury and the Moon in Iran's chart and the IC are continuing into next year. So I do think there's still grave danger to Iran in terms of them suffering some sort of regime change. Now, I'm not really saying I'm a fan of the current government, but it's not up to Israel to install someone they particularly like. And I know a lot of people will say Iran are not fully on board in terms of the financial system and other things, so that it would be very convenient to have a leadership in there that was more amenable to globalist, domination. But I think this will rumble on into next year, particularly next February, where I think we're going to see the denouement of this particular crisis that is totally unnecessarily being created. And we're all being cheered on in the UK and the US to think that this is a great victory for democracy, for world peace. When Pakistan can have nuclear weapons, don't they have a highly unstable government? Aren't they also considered a radical Islamic regime, but somehow that's okay? And maybe this will make it more likely that Iran will want to get nuclear weapons sent in from North Korea or Pakistan so they can use it to defend themselves if they feel they are going to be kind of painted out as the black-hearted baddie of the peace and then set up for destruction. Now, something interesting I noticed. Now, you guys might know Mike Adams, the health ranger, and you may have visited the Natural News website, which I had. For many years, I'd looked at the Natural News website. I'd seen Mike Adams come on InfoWars. He seemed very educated, quietly spoken, very informed person. I was usually impressed by him. He popped up on my Twitter feed yesterday saying all sorts of things about Israel, the port of Haifa, saying that Maersk was no longer delivering containers into Haifa, that it's Israel's only deep-sea port, they can't use it, that this is a big blow to the Israeli economy, that people are very keen to leave, that their economic situation is in shambles. And obviously he portrays it in a very reasonable way, that it sounds very educated, logical and whatever. So I read it, was kind of interested. And then I noticed after I read it, I kept seeing tweets of his. First of all, they were also going on about, no, his analysis showed that it didn't really look like these bunker-busted bombs had done much damage. And then it went on. Everything sounds logical, well-formulated, reasonable. But then, after reading 5 or 6 tweets that sounded all very on point and like he knew what he was talking about, I found one saying, oh, yes, Trump just did this to get Israel off his back. Nothing's happened. I thought, aha, yeah, that's exactly the same narrative we're getting from Alex Jones and some others who want to run cover for Trump and don't want to, let people, his base, think this is regime change and not what they want. So I'm suspicious of him. I'll tell you why I also am suspicious of him. When COVID started in January, before the mainstream media in the UK even got hold of it and ran with it, or in the US, by that matter, the international media hadn't even said much about it. He was coming on InfoWars saying, oh my God, this is huge. This is a dangerous disease. This is turning people's testicles into slop, and it's damaging women's ovaries. It's the worst thing ever. It's a big problem. Then, as soon as the mainstream media started saying it was a big problem, suddenly he was backtracking from it. Then it was a different narrative. Then the vaccine came out and he was warning about that. Then the Ukraine-Russia war happened. Then at the end of that year, because it started in the Feb, in the November, he was saying, oh, by December, we'll all be starving because, they're not going to be able to get any of this essential potash to create the fertilizer, and the whole food chain is going to break down because farming is impossible. And he was mentioning a whole lot of scenarios. And of course, he's quite educated in science. He makes it sound all very logical, reasonable, and scientific, and you really buy into it. It never happened. I stopped listening then. But since, I bet he's been on his channels talking about all this potential disaster and doing a lot what Galloway and Alex is, fear-mongering, creating drama, telling people it's the end of the world, but it never happens. And now he's back, suddenly out of nowhere, popping up on my Twitter feed when I don't follow him, telling these narratives that, oh, Israel's about to collapse and it's so bad there. So, I mean, we just can't believe this, can we? It's weird. But one thing I can confirm, because I checked it myself on Flight Radar, there are no flights leading from any airports, including Ben Gurion, the main one in Israel. No flights from, no flights to. So it is clearly true that the airport is closed. So That part of the story is true. How much damage there's to the Haifa port? Well, we don't know. We cannot tell. When they have the Reuters cameras showing the bombs coming in from Iran, we don't know, and we don't have any footage from Iran. They shut down their internet, so they don't want information getting out. The Israelis don't want information getting out. We don't know what the hell's really going on in that situation at all. So a little story that'll interest you guys. Back in, I think it was 1986, forgetting the year, I think it was 87, there was a South African Airways flight that was coming from Taiwan into Johannesburg. It was called the Helderberg, and it went down before it managed to reach Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. It was a very big story because South African Airways at the time had a fantastic safety record. It was, up till when it went bust not so long ago, a very good airline. So at the time, people said, oh, what was going on and why did it go down? And of course, because it had gone down in the depths of the Indian Ocean, it was very difficult for them to get the black box. And when they did get it, there was rather strange conflicting information. So the news we got in South Africa at the time was, there were fireworks they were importing from Taiwan and something must have blown up, blah, blah, blah. But it seemed afterwards that the pilot had to sign some non-disclosure agreement. He was very terrified to fly this flight. And when things started to go wrong and the fire broke out, he seemed to almost know what was going on, and they picked that up from what they did get off the black box. Now, the plane was flying in a combi style, so what they'd done is they shut off half of economy, which is something they used to do then. They did some board up and they'd used all that for cargo, and that's where the fire started. And the fire got out of control, which meant the plane broke up and went down before they did Mayday, but it was too late for them to fly into Mauritius. Now, the story was the fire had started earlier, but they could not stop in any other countries like Malaysia because there would have been a full investigation into what had caused the fire, and it would have come to light what was on the flight. So many people said that it was some sort of enriched, I think it was plutonium or something about plutonium that was coming from North Korea via Taiwan. Now, Taiwan was a big friend of apartheid South Africa. They did an enormous amount of trade because Taiwan was sort of aggro to China. They did keep in touch with South Africa. So Taiwan could have been on board in helping South Africa via North Korea to import this plutonium for their nuclear program. But there were stories that the international globalist cabal were keen to take the whole of South Africa down, and they wanted not only to scupper the nuclear program, but they also knew that a plane flight going on could lessen confidence in the government and perhaps put a spoke in the wheels of things leading to the eventual sort of decline of South Africa to become, they had the whole negotiation that was handed over, which was kind of not people didn't get what they thought was going to happen, just handed over to the ANC kind of thing. So not to get into that whole political discussion, but the Helderberg was actually key to diminishing and eventually bringing down the South African National Party and government, right? And it wasn't only about stopping the nuclear program, but what they did do as well was a lot of people said that someone had deliberately started the fire. An agent provocateur deliberately put something in the cargo hold to start the fire so that the plane would go down, so that the plutonium would never reach. Now, interestingly, at the time, South Africa was involved in a conflict in Angola. The Cubans and Russians on the communist side were supporting a communist regime in Angola, and the South Africans, along with the CIA, were both fighting that regime, and they were kind of desperate to get other weapons as well. So it could have been that other weapons, non-nuclear, were also being brought in from Taiwan, and the forces that were supporting the communist regime also didn't want those weapons to reach South Africa. So I'm just thinking it's similar in a way. They wanted to stop the South African nuclear program and bring the South African government down, and one of the ways they did it was by bringing this aeroplane down. They also want to stop the Iran nuclear program and alongside that bring their government down. And so it's not just about the nuclear, it's about bringing governments down. It's about globalist puppets getting in and regime change, as it was with Helderberg in South Africa. Hope you enjoyed that.